every rural road. Hyundai Country Calander.
We have been the first orchard to pick for many, many years.
But getting their fruit to market is a challenge.
We are weather dependent. We can only come in 3 hours either side of high tide, and that depends on the size of the swell.
There's something about island life that is very special.
Motiti Island in the Bay of Plenty has proved a winning environment for growing avocados. The subtropical climate inspired the first plantings 30 years ago. It's July and harvest is in full swing.
Been looking at this tree for weeks. Every time we drive past it.
The low-hanging fruit is picked first.
How's it going, ladies? All good?
Hello.
Good. Got some nice fruit coming in there.
Absolutely gorgeous fruit.
Very good, beautiful fruit under there as well. Yep.
Greg Prince manages Sunchaser Orchards.
If anything's been rubbing on the ground, just leave it, just drop it.
Absolutely.
We try to do sort of the bottom 1.5, maybe 2 meters of the trees. We normally have 2 or 3 people, that's all.
Laura Grittenden has been on Motiti Island for about 9 months.
I think you have to be a certain type of person to live on said island because it does get a little bit isolated at the best of times. But the flip side to that is it's so peaceful. There's no commute to work either, which is fabulous. We live right in the middle of the avocado orchards. The harvesting itself is quite heavy work. At one stage, we were walking about 18 kilometres a day. So you've got to have some grunt about you.
One of the problems we have with low fruit is we get damage from machinery, especially mowers and that sort of thing. So you can see there's a little gouge there, so that'll be a reject.
Sunchaser is owned by Mark Yort.
Hi, Greg.
Oh, hello, Mark. How's it going?
Good.
Good to see you. I'm just checking all the filters are.
Yep.
Whether I need to pull them apart and clean them.
Yep. You wouldn't have used the irrigation system for...
Haven't used the irrigation for ages.
No.
So that one looks good.
When Mark and his wife Robbie first visited the island, they were smitten.
Oh, I fell in love with it. Instantly. And it was just a large grazing block. It was easy contour as far as the soils, the fertility, free draining, everything was there. But the biggest challenge was the piece of water between here and the mainland.
Anything big has to be transported by barge.
We used to just come in to the rocky coast, and while it worked, it wasn't really functional. So we had engineers design a barge landing, and after a lot of time and expense, we had a storm about 6 weeks after it was commissioned, and it blew apart.
I am going to end up sideways in here, so I'll need to straighten up before anyone moves.
Okay, yep.
We rebuilt the barge landing at great expense. It's been there now for 12 plus years. It's as good as the day it was built.
Greg says orcharding on an island is an expensive business.
Just running that barge, the company owns 3 of these trucks. Logistically, it's a huge, huge amount that the company has to absorb before we even start looking at the costs of running the orchard.
But the payoff is getting a premium price for fruit that's first to market each year. It takes a big team to get the fruit off on an orchard this size. That's the job of Peter Marshall's contract gang.
We've got a team of 15 picking today. We'll take 35 tonne of fruit off. Typically they'll pick about 6 bins each a day, 370 odd kgs per bin. Quite a substantial amount of fruit. We've been associated with Sunchaser for 10 years now. The majority of the season is based around the export, and that doesn't start until mid-August through to September, and so this is traditionally a very quiet time for us. The opportunity to keep the guys employed within the industry is huge. Making sure we've got food and fuel and parts and everything that we need to maintain machines and tractors and keep everybody fed, that's the big part of the job. We provide a full-time cook and I assist in the kitchen. I do a lot of dishwashing. But it's an enjoyable part of the year. It's the one time that I really manage to get the entire team together, and you can build those relationships, and that's a big part of the success of our particular business.
Sunchaser advisor and avocado expert Jonathan Cutting is checking out the harvest.
Well, there's very few orchards around that you're actually picking this volume of fruit. Good consistent size, there's good fruit coming out of here.
The comments are music to the ears for owner Mark Yort.
The summer has been diabolical. We've had so little sunshine relative to a normal year, and fruit size has been down. There's no irrigation in here, never has been, and while we do have irrigation on about 10% of the orchard, haven't used it in the last 3 years because of the rainfall, really, because of the La Nina weather pattern and summer rains.
Jonathan has studied avocados for years.
The original hash tree, which was identified in 1928 in California, is dead, so it does have a finite life. Most commercial orchards under New Zealand conditions have a life of between 30 and 50 years. Avocados, for me, are a fascinating tree. They have a lot of biological quirks that you don't find in other species of commercially cultivated orchard plants. The closest thing would probably be the mango. It's viewed as an evolutionary ghost by the evolutionary botanists. It should not have made it as a plant. It should have become extinct. And it doesn't have root hairs, which is almost unique for any plant in the plant kingdom. We're in the oldest block on this orchard, planted in the early 1990s, and it's more typical of what most of the avocado trees in New Zealand look like. So really big old rainforest trees. I like the tree because it's actually newly domesticated. We don't have a big gene pool to work with, and it gives the opportunity to be a very innovative and productive horticulturist in the sense that you would have to use skills rather than chemicals. And there's no blueprint for growing avocados. So every grower tends to do it slightly their own way.
And getting the fruit to the pack house on the mainland as fast as possible is the next big challenge. Motiti Island off the Tauranga coast is flat with fertile soils, creating perfect growing conditions. These blocks are planted in the Hass variety and are usually the first avocados to go on sale in New Zealand each winter. Greg Prince manages Sunchaser's orchards with help from his wife Lynn. Just one visit to the island convinced them to take the job.
They can come to the side here. We were actually blown away by the infrastructure that was set up here, how everything worked, and it was way beyond what I sort of anticipated. It felt quite nostalgic coming back after having had our own farms back in Zimbabwe. So we thought, well, let's give it a bash. We said, well, give it 3 years, and I'm now in my 8th year here, so it's been good.
Finding long-term staff is often a challenge for Greg.
When people arrive, it's fantastic. Everyone talks about the sunny island out there and everything, but it is a quiet life out here. Most things are off-grid. We solar power, all our water's rainwater. There's no dairy around the corner to shoot to if you're short of something. Most of our commuting backwards and forwards to the mainland is on the plains.
Before coming to Motiti, Greg managed kiwi fruit orchards.
Besides home garden avos, I'd never done anything else with avos, so it was a big learning curve. I was told by a friend that I was going to have so much spare time I wouldn't know what to do with myself after kiwi fruit, and I beg to differ hugely on that.
Sunchaser owner Mark Yort is always looking to improve their crop. 5 different treatments are being trialled in this block.
Number 1. The trial is not conducted by ourselves, it's independently conducted by Peak Research in Hawke's Bay. We've got biostimulants and some fairly unique nutritional products which are known to improve cell wall strength and just make the fruit perform better after harvesting. The number of fruit's not important, it's the analysis of the fruit after we've harvested and sent it off.
Well, a few fruit in there.
Our climate, wet, quite humid, we tend to be prone to post-harvest storage rots, and so the products we've included in this trial are designed to overcome that. 18.65. We want to be industry leaders, so we have to look at the issues that are facing the industry and see if we can address them and hopefully solve them. In the first instance, if it gives Sunchaser a benefit, great. If it gives the industry a benefit, all the better.
There's a lot to navigate in getting the fruit off the island.
You've got to be thinking a week or two ahead all the time. All our heavy transport, fertiliser, the fruit, bringing equipment across backwards and forwards, is all on the barge. Again, we are weather dependent, the tide dependent. We can only come in 3 hours either side of high tide, and that depends on the size of the swell. There's a fair chop out there, but it's not too bad. It's very doable. But we were expecting a bit more wind, so that's why we made the call to do two trucks today. But it's not too bad out there. We're looking at about 15 knots of wind, southwesterly.
The barge is aptly named Deliverance, and Ben Poff is the skipper.
She's built in 1988 in Australia, and so that makes her 30 plus years old. She carries 100 tonne on deck. At the moment we've only got 2 trucks, so that's about 50 odd tonne.
The barge transports pretty much anything that will fit.
Greg's house, we took the house over in 2 pieces. That was the whole deck, couldn't see a thing. Diggers and building materials. Sometimes carry big water tanks. But do cattle on and off the island.
And cattle aren't the only creatures to travel to the island by sea.
How's it going, Judy?
Oh, it's going well.
All good, the bee's looking all right.
Absolutely.
When I started here, we brought on 600 beehives and took them off every year. And I said to Mark, why don't we do our own bees? So we did. We bought some beehives and we've multiplied and got up to nearly 450 odd now. The island can only sustain a certain amount of bees. Summer's fine, but winter with the cold and lack of flowers. We do supplement them with pollen and sugar syrup to keep them up.
For barge skipper Ben, carrying bees is a challenge.
We try and do it at night when they're all asleep, so they're all locked in their boxes, and we've got to get out here early dawn before it gets too hot, before they start flying. But there's always bees. There's always clouds of bees. They get everywhere.
The journey to Tauranga is nearly done.
Here it's a 2-hour steam, half an hour that's in the harbour. So a round trip's about 5.5 hours, 6 hours. Back and forward, back and forward. It's nice when you get to go somewhere else, actually.
It's been a smooth run today. On the water, and on the road. Sunchaser avocados travel further than most fruit to reach the packhouse. The crop's grown on Motiti Island, shipped to Tauranga and trucked to Te Puke. This is one of the town's biggest packhouses. Mark Yort and avocado expert Jonathan Cutting are watching the Sunchaser fruit go through.
They have a maximum post-harvest life of around about 4 weeks after picking. Very similar to a banana. And once the ripening process has been initiated, there's very little that we can do to stop that process. They're grading for cosmetic defect and then also for food safety issues. So insect damage or rat chews or possum chews. A class 1 fruit or a class 2 fruit is a very high grade fruit. They would typically end up in the retail trade, in the supermarkets. Size is an interesting thing. Avocado is sold on a per piece basis. Quality would be the same in terms of the eating experience from a large fruit or a small fruit. It's a perception thing. But nonetheless, it's one of those things where you do get rewarded for that perception. We have another grade called Class 3, which is perfectly sound inside, but a bit more blemished, and that often ends up in the food service or the sushi bar business. There's a grade further down that is still safe, which ends up in food processing, and then there's out-and-out reject, which typically goes to composting.
Steve Butler is the packhouse manager.
We get every 40 seconds live pack-out information of the fruit going over. We can see how much is going into the highest grade and then our reject grades. We can monitor it, and then the team here, they can make adjustments based on that information. Real-time information allows you to make tweaks on the fly rather than sort of sit back after you've packed and wonder what happened there. We encourage growers to come in and visit us and have a look at their lines go over, and so we can demonstrate to them we actually know what we're doing.
It's always nice to see the finished product.
It looks very good.
Contrary to what many may think, avocados are not an easy fruit to produce. To get things right year in, year out is a challenge. We focus on the local market because we're early and it suits our whole production plan. From a marketing point of view, I've always put a Sunchaser label on our fruit. 99% of the time it's a positive. If something untoward goes on with the fruit and you have to accept that it's a fresh article and it can deteriorate, we take the brickbats with the bouquets.
For Mark, standing out matters in a market that's becoming increasingly competitive.
Production is increasing. There's some large orchards under development and in production in the far north. Last year and this year, the market has been oversupplied early and prices have been affected.
Back on the island, Greg Prince is already thinking about next year's crop.
How you going, Joel? How are you doing? Good. No, that's great.
The pruning generally is to bring height down, to open up the trees as well, to get light in. The other thing we're trying to get is bigger fruit.
Big guy in the middle?
This
Or
one
that
up
one in
here,
the very,
or-
very middle.
Yeah.
We'll take out this middle right here and just come down to the wishbone here.
When you first sort of start with avos and you start doing pruning like that, you sort of wonder, wow, what have I done? But the trees do come back quickly. We aim to take about 30% off the tree a year. It actually helps the trees with pollination. There's less flowers for the bees to visit. Hopefully our quality of flowers better as well.
And this chipper does the cleanup.
It's amazing what goes through there. The guys running it do save me several jobs, and one, they're pulling the branches out of the trees and feeding them through the chipper. They also keeping the orchard tidy, where they're only leaving small stuff we can mulch With that little chipper, we end up with the sward of grass still in place, and it makes orchard management a lot easier.
Island life is not all about work. Mark and Robbie often come over for the weekend.
While it's not far from the mainland, that separation, it creates a completely different feeling. There's something about island life that is very special. Beautiful morning.
We'd spent 16 years camping. We bought a caravan out here last year. We saw these glamping tents and we thought that'll be fun to have here, you know, not a serious house, just a nice weekend retreat. It's probably far more glamorous than what I thought it was going to be. Mark and I decided that we might as well be comfortable.
Like all labours of love, when you develop something like this, there has to be a little bit of upside. Here on Motiti Island, there's a huge amount of upside because you've got water all around you. It's a fisherman's paradise. The last 2 years have been probably the most challenging, and it's on the back of pretty major climatic events. Put that aside, there is a very good foundation. I always say if you've got a product of the quality of an avocado, nutrient dense, the good oil, the benefits to general health, and people understand that, they will purchase the fruit.
Country Calendar was brought to you by Hyundai.